Every great innovation was once a simple idea daring to be different. Something I came up with myself. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jürgen Moors. I'm a consultant, a strategic advisor, and a coach. And again, welcome to this 30-day live stream on intrapreneurship. Why did I kick off with this self-devised quote? I want to stress out one important thing in there, and that's different. Because today, like I said yesterday, we will dive into implementing the ideas. In this third week, we're becoming practical and we're going to talk about the implementation of ideas. And every single project that you do as an entrepreneur, every single innovation that you try to tackle as an entrepreneur or that you try to bring will be different. So be aware of that. Maybe your big framework will always be a little bit the same, but you will see that in the detail, there most of the innovations are different. Also, when you try to implement them with a fixed framework that you have. So adaptability, something we talked about a couple of days ago, will stay very, very important. You will also see that a lot of the stuff that we discussed before, whether it was about skills, whether it was about this week already when we talked about the business case, about how communication, you will see them return today in this discussion that we have about implementing new ideas as well. You see that return. So now, slowly in this third week, you will see certain ideas that we discussed in the last couple of 2 weeks. You will more and more see them return because they are all equally important to a large extent in this area when you be successful as an entrepreneur in a corporate environment. Now, what are some key strategies for an implementation? And I would like to start off with another quote, in this case from Joel A. Baker, who once said, "Vision without action is merely a dream. Action without vision just passes time, and vision with action can change the world." And that basically summarizes it really, really well. When you have a lot of ideas, when you have a lot of innovations, but you never make any actions out of that, then they will merely stay in your head and stay a dream, or maybe they will be on paper. That's it. When you simply do things like a lot of people do in large corporations, we just get up, go to work, and get in the fuzz of the day. Well, we are basically spending our time because there's no bigger vision behind it. And when we combine both, then we can actually start changing things in a large corporation. Then you're actually becoming the intrapreneur that you want to become. Now, what are some key strategies that you really have to look forward? And I said, we will repeat certain things. The first thing is define very clear goals. Now, whenever you come up with an innovation, when you start an innovative project as an entrepreneur, make sure that you have very specific and measurable objectives for the implementation of your idea. But there is a big but. We already talked a lot about breakthrough innovations. We talked about radical innovations. Now, sometimes you know the direction, meaning you know you go north, but you not necessarily know every specific measurable objective in between. To give you an example, when I started together with Hybot the design of the float arm, coming from paper to something that was an industrialized version was a trajectory where we could not make these measurable objectives so easily. We had in between objectives where we said, okay, we first now want to get to the point where we have a demonstrator that we can test, because can it fulfill the basic needs that we wanted? The basic needs were we need to be able to use it easily, and we wanted to be able to do visual inspections and wall thickness measurements. That was number one. And then the second thing is we added from, okay, when we don't have that, we want to get to an industrialized version. And when we have that, we want to add other possibilities. So sometimes you need to be flexible and not make it too concrete, but if you can, make it very specific and measurable. Also make sure, and we discussed this already when we talked about the business case, make sure it always aligns with the strategy of your company or your business unit of your team. And if it does not necessarily align, make sure that your management is also aware of that so that they know you are going in a slightly different direction. So that was point one, define clear goals. Point two, create an action plan. And like I said, vision without action is a dream. An action plan, make it as specific again as you can with a step-by-step approach that you know from, okay, what is coming when, and also define very clear timelines, key performance indicators, and resource allocations. This is really important when you work with people, whether it's your own resources, whether it's your own people, or even when it's people from another department, people from external companies. Why? Because what you will see is that every project or innovation will, especially the radical and the breakthrough ones, will come up with hurdles. And hurdles means timelines can shift. And when you have timelines, you can also track them. And when the timeline is about to shift, it also means that the allocation of resources, it either has to be prolonged, or with some other partner they cannot start without that you met a certain deadline or key performance indicator. So it helps you to also look at how do we have to shift, or how do I as an entrepreneur have to shift the resources and the people that I allocated to a certain project, and what does the impact on the key performance indicators that we that came up with in the beginning of the project. So make sure that you, for each step, you have milestones, key performance indicator, timelines. You know that you have to be adaptable and flexible, but then you already know, okay, we have a basic plan to go. Third thing to really look at is engage your stakeholders. We already discussed this in the communication aspect. We already discussed this in the business case, sorry, elements from yesterday, but I can't emphasize this enough. Talk to your stakeholders, whether it's those who will be supporting you in the management layers, or your colleagues, or working with you, or those who will actually have the impact of the innovation that you're actually going to bring, because they also need to know what is coming. And you know what an effective communication is. Make it very clear that you tackle the topic, what's in it for me, meaning if the impact for me is that I will have to do another job, communicate it very clearly, because that's the impact. Maybe there will also be the job will become a little bit easier. That's a benefit, so talk about that. Same thing for for the management. Is there an efficiency gain, or is your cost structure going down? Talk about that effect as well. So be very clear when you talk what the benefits and the potential impact is. If you cannot give a perfect assessment, you can say from I expect, and give a range. If you're not sure and you don't know anything, sometimes it's better to shut up, because otherwise people start to think or fantasize something around that. So be careful when you engage with stakeholders. Certainties, uncertainties, make it also clear that it's an uncertainty. If you don't know it, you better not talk about it. Last thing, and that's the fourth thing when you talk about strategy, is allocation of the resources. That's why you need your business case. Again, sorry, that you also can make sure from, okay, these are the resources that I need. And resources can be different. It's not just the financial resources. It's also the human resources that you need. It's the time resources that you need. Sometimes it's the resources that you need from other departments or external groups. So all of this combined are the resources. Make them clear. What are the necessary resources that I need? And how can you optimize existing resources? Because resources are always a constraint that you will see, whether it's financial, whether it's people. You will find out that when you are in a large organization, even when you think, okay, I'm working for this huge, big corporation, this great corporation, even you will be confronted at a certain point in time with constraints when it comes to resources. So also become very creative with your resources, meaning think about, okay, what are the resources that I need? Can I do it within my own group of people? Sometimes it is great to, like I did, for instance, with the tablet and the robotics, I looked for people internally in my own group who had a really interest in working with that. And when people are interested and really driven, bitten by a certain passion, they will make sure that they have time for it. They will become more efficient with their own time and their own tasks. And they maybe quit from half hour lunch to a quarter lunch just to work on this. So existing resources, when you can bring them in and passionate them, or bring a lot of passion to them, it's a good way. If you want to use internal resources, there's also the option to bring external resources. But that you can do it in two ways. Either you can onboard the external resources for your project, for your innovation, or you can say, no, I bring my external resources in to free up time for my internal resources. So that he will do the job, or this person will do the job of one of my internal resources, and my internal resource will then actually work on the project, because he or she has a passion for it. She now has dedicated time for it. It's a way also to learn Maybe you need some really good internal knowledge to be successful. So that is also something that you can look at to use your resources. Now, these are some strategies. But like I said before, every project is different. Every innovation is different, especially when you're on the breakthroughs or in the radical innovations. You will meet hurdles and problems. So be ready for that. And that's why we discussed yesterday in the business case approach, make sure you have a risk register. And so that you already in advance are rather aware from, okay, what are my potential risks and what are alternatives? What can I do? But also very clearly decide from, okay, when that risk materializes, it's over and out. Also bring that in. Why you need that? Because that way you can for yourself manage that risk. Everything that is associated with implementing a new idea, what you typically see in large organizations is because they step and enter in a larger idea, they sometimes think from, yeah, but we put in already so much time and so much money, and you come or you have the risk of ending up in the sunk cost fallacy, be keeping and keeping investing and keeping investing. But then the pit and the loss that you have will only get bigger. Whereas in the beginning, when you define your risks and you define very clearly, this is the point where I will actually stop and leave, then it also makes it easier to say from, okay, we reached this point, this was a risk, we got the project right now. That is one thing. So make sure you have your risk register, your strategies for mitigation, your contingency planning, that you have this in place. And again, also there, you can't have everything. Don't overspend your time in it, because it's also not a great idea to have 100 potential risks, because definitely one will materialize. Now make sure you focus on the major risks. And the second thing is, you can expect resistance to change. In any great large organization, there is resistance to change. And depending on where you are, this resistance can be big or can be small. But expect it from management, the people that are working with you. So you have to see how you can tackle it. And an example that I gave you before already is the unit that I took over was rather conservative, and they were rather resistant to change. And this was for two reasons. One of them is they didn't have much change in the past. It needed to be the cheap way. They were always pressed into this change. And the second thing is they had some bigger changes, but every time this ended up in a disaster. The change was done, it was not properly followed up, and they would, yeah, let's say the windows were broken, the new windows, and they were there and having to pick up the pieces. So what I did is I needed to bring a culture of change slowly. So I brought in the topic of culture hacking, meaning I would change a lot of stuff very regularly, every week, sometimes every day. And these were very small things. The way that we wrote a report. Instead of writing a report, we would bring it to the computer. We would change the way we looked at our morning meeting. Typically, we opened SAP. Now we built a special cockpit around it so that we could actually look at it. And that way, they became more and more adaptable, because the person can easily change a small thing in his life every day than these big changes. We have a problem with big changes, but small habits to adapt, that's a lot easier for us. So that's why I went this approach of culture hacking. Plus, I did the second thing in this culture hacking. We tested something for a while. When we changed a report or something, we would test it. After a while, a couple of weeks and months, we agreed upon that in advance. We looked at, okay, how does it work? What are the experiences? If the majority was happy, we continued and optimized further in the next step. And when the majority said, "Nah, this is something, Jurgen, what we had was better," my ego was not the size that I said, "No, we have to keep on doing this." No, we just returned. And then I could also see that if a change is not what we expect, then we also, as a group, and we also see from our leader, Jurgen, that we return to what we were doing, because maybe that was the most efficient way. So I have no problem to return if something proved not to work out. This is also something that you need to be able to do when you are trying to overcome the resistance of change. But change will be there. And again, there, it was really important what I said in the aspect of communication in the business case. Identify to your stakeholders, make sure that you communicate with your stakeholders, that you give them the right message, that the message is adapted to what they will have as a benefit or they will experience. So it should be a very tailored message to that. So remember that resistance to change that it might be there, and how to tackle it. That's the second big thing in the challenges that you have to work with, beside the whole aspect of risks. And this slowly brings me to the end of this session on, okay, how do you now come up with the implementing strategy? First of all, most important is still this quote: without action, your innovation will stay a dream. If you go into action, every innovation will be different. You have some very clear strategies to come up with your implementation, meaning goal definition, create an action plan, your engagement with your stakeholders, and the allocation of your resources. And then be aware that every project, especially the bigger ones, will somehow at some point in time um, meet a problem or a hurdle. So make sure that you are open or aware that you could find resistance somewhere in your stakeholders, one thing, and try to manage your risk via a risk register and your backup plans. So those are the most important things that I wanted to look at today. And with that, I'd like to close off today with a 30-day live stream focused on implementing. And tomorrow we're going to do this, and we're going to take a lot of the stuff that I just talked, and we're going to look at a case study from my own past as a successful entrepreneur, how it worked on an actual project, and we try to bring in as much as we can in the time that we need. So see you tomorrow for another episode of this live stream on the 30-day live stream on entrepreneurship. Bye bye.